Mikhail Jenkins, your host,
This is Muhammad Alec.
and we are back for episode 11 for Behind the Ballot. Had a very great inaugural episode with Jamel Holly. I hope everyone was able to appreciate and take a lot from that conversation. We'll look to have him on to discuss further important topics throughout the year, throughout the remaining of the year, and as well as next year as well. And definitely look out for our next guest, hoping to have them on in September. So today we're going to get into a lot of stuff here. A lot of stuff's been happening since we last met Muhammad. Going to be going over the expansion of that company stake that the U.S. government is now going for certain companies like Nvidia and now a 10% stake in Intel. We'll be looking at international affairs, Trump's foreign policy for peace in Ukraine and Gaza, looking at the Ukrainian weapons deal, Putin Zelensky meeting, as well as with the European leaders, and also the Hamas ceasefire. Then we'll be moving to it's a lot here, people. Another good one is Trump vowing to lead a movement to end mail-in ballot voting and voting machines for 2026 midterms. And then lastly, we're going to end off with just going over some recent polling data on the economy and personal sentiment that some voters have been having throughout the first 6 months of 8 months now for the Trump presidency. So let's dive right on in here. So the Trump administration is reportedly discussing acquiring approximately a 10% equity stake in Intel Corporation, which is a major U.S. semiconductor manufacturer. That's like the chips that we were talking about on that last podcast before we had the special guest episode. So this stems from converting some or all of Intel's allocated funds under the CHIP Act, which was passed during the Biden administration, transfer those funds into government-owned shares. So Intel has been struggling financially with its stock plummeting over 50% in the past year due to manufacturing delays. Competition from TSMC and NVIDIA and broader market shifts toward AI chips. So the company received 8.5 billion in direct grants and up to 11 billion in loans from the CHIPS Act to bolster domestic chip production. So Bloomberg reported first that these talks happened first August 14th. They were citing similar sources on the matter. Howard Lutnick, Trump's one of Trump's key advisors.
Hate that guy.
Yeah, potentially he's being eyed for Commerce Secretary.
Yeah, not surprised. I mean,
right.
He knows Epstein. He can probably be president for the next thing we all know.
Right. So he at least got on CNBC and confirmed in an interview that the discussions are happening. So this is more of an emphasis that the government would, seek no governance rights or board seats, framing it as a passive investment in a way. So they'll just take the 10% stake and convert it from what they're receiving from the CHIPS Act, but they won't take stake in the actual, whether it's, board seats or things of that nature where they actually have a vote on certain matters. So this is good. I feel like this is not going to be the only company that's going to be falling in these trenches. Or do I think is it going to be the only industry that's going to fall into these type of government deals? Should you say?
I mean, this is overall a pretty interesting deal because I don't think this has ever been done before in America. I'm gonna just chat GPT it. But the thing that I'm interested in right now is, Mikhail, as you just mentioned, Intel is down 55% over the year.
Yeah, they've risen up just a little bit. I think about 10% since the announcement was just starting. So they're kind of getting a little bit of a bounce back.
Yeah, but it don't look good.
Yeah, no. It's not good at all. It's not where you want to be as a stock, basically. If I were to say, they're not really in the greatest positions. So I think this is. I mean, we were talking about this before, how Trump is kind of giving, the keys to the next president to kind of, restructure really what the powers of the president and what the purse of the president can really do. And, I don't think that this is only going to stay to one industry.
Yeah.
Like, we already subsidize a crap ton of farming industry. Now we're taking, company stake in failing companies in the chip industry. I can only little cat going by.
All
Yeah,
the
I can
time.
only
All the
imagine,
time.
what's going to be next. Is it going to be, if we have another housing crisis? Is it going to be mortgage companies? You
It's
know,
actually interesting that you do bring up the housing crisis because they in the past, so I was correct in that the US has never bought stake in a company for the sheer sake of passive ownership.
yeah,
But during the housing crisis, they did buy quite a few stocks in the companies such as Citigroup, Bank of America, JP Morgan, and GM, because they had the automotive issues on the tail end of the housing crisis. And the United States bought quite a few stocks of preferred shares, and then they sold it years later when the companies were in better financial position. So I know a lot of people when they think about the past, the recession, they always hear about the bailout. That's
yeah,
quite literally what it was. These companies were improperly handling themselves. They're the ones that were taking advantage of the American people. They're the ones that were selling us BS housing loans and then literally trading on these housing loans. And when
literally.
they knew, this is a funny thing that I like to say, the financial world really isn't that, what's the word I'm looking for? Not influential, sophisticated. Yeah. The financial world really isn't that sophisticated. A lot of it is just quite literally people trying to get as much money as they possibly can.
Oh
There's
yeah,
no
like,
like rhyme or reason to it aside from that. There isn't people trying to set up companies that would be end up, ushering in an American golden era through XYZ means. These people just want to make a quick dollar and they will sell out other people to make that quick dollar. And
yeah, but that,
I think that's a very good way to describe the US stock market, honestly. And I mean, we're seeing that right now with how many stocks are so overvalued, And the reason why I bring that up is because we're at a point where the U.S. government is talking about putting money into a dying tech company. No, I shouldn't say dying, but poorly performing tech
yeah,
company. And we are, I would say likely it's if they do go through with it, it's not going to be the only company they settle with. Now, I do think the reason why this is being loft suggested is because of if Intel goes down, that'd be a big hit to United States' semiconductor and chip manufacturing ability. So this is less of a wanting passive income for America than it is, and it's more of bailout, in my opinion.
yeah. I would agree too.
Um,
Definitely, kind of like what Obama did, bailing out, in 2008. But that was something that kind of needed it to happen.
I do know they should have
Uh,
burned down. Those companies should have burned down. I honestly mean it. Let them suffer. The American people are already suffering. You know
no,
what I mean?
I'm completely with you there. I've always been on the forefront, like when Bernie Sanders came into the scene. That, if we're able to bail out, Wall Street, why can't we bail out, Main Street? Basically, that was my sentiment when he was running. And, I understood the reasonings, and, well, the financial reasonings, and also the financial instability that would have caused if those companies were to go under. But what I think is the next step that should be done really is that these companies need to start being broken up and stop being conglomerates to where they're borderline monopolies, to where you can't have them fail. Like, you actually have to, funnel millions of taxpayer dollars to prop up these failing businesses. Just because, what if they do fail, they'll have a ripple effect across the economy and will drastically affect Americans. I
That
think
is the concern of
the
and
next step
why they
should be
did it.
just break them up. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to break them up on individual scales to what they do, and then after a long track record of seeing them, pull in positive profits, pull in positive sheets and things of that nature, that's when, they can look to reorganize again into Intel or whatever company that it originally was.
That's a fair thought, and I would agree with that, especially if that counting is healthy. But my big concern with a lot of these companies, I should say a lot, based off prior history, some of the largest United States companies have had very It's a term in the accounting world. Fancy accounting is a way to say it. I
Okay,
mean, when
gotcha.
people talk about Hollywood, they talk about Hollywood accounting. It's just different verbs of the same thing, the same idea. And it's creative, I should say creative accounting. That's actually the way to say it, creative accounting.
Oh yes, I
And
definitely
what that
recognize.
means is basically just using the tax law or using things that aren't illegal exactly in order to offset losses or boost up profits, XYZ, whatever it means doing it. And the reason why this is possible is because a lot of people can just kick back losses to the next quarter or
Yeah,
two quarters down. Like say for example, a big thing is estimated revenue. And if a company isn't expecting, NVIDIA is a fantastic example of this in the modern time, actually, with the B20 chips. NVIDIA is expecting more than 20 billion in sales from those chips from China. And they booked that into their accounting. They plan for it because that's well, you would expect that. It makes sense. You know what I
right.
mean? You're expecting to sell $20 billion of chips. You're gonna plan for that. You're gonna put it in your financial sheets. And then when that doesn't happen, you can either A, take the fat loss, have your stock value go down, or B, kick it back until the next quarter, a year later, through creative accounting means, and get that to the point where you're still making profit despite the fact that your company is bleeding money. And that's what we saw with Enron is a big example. They hit a
Yeah.
lot of their losses. This is back in 2000. Enron created so much accounting rules, and so did the housing crisis create the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. SOX is a fun way to say it. And they really just hid their income in not offshore entities, onshore entities called special hybrid vehicles, if I recall correctly. And really, what it allowed them to do was to push their losses onto like child companies because they were the parent company, and and the parent company itself would claim a profit. And once it got out that Enron literally didn't have cash because they were losing money despite what the accounting was saying, that's when the company bled and died instantly. And then
Right.
when we saw in the housing crisis, it was a similar deal. These companies were betting on the housing
Right off mortgages to
very
people that couldn't pay.
irresponsibly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I remember
then
that. Yeah, that was horrible and horrific. And
most
um,
people do on
yeah, a little personal note with that is that actually, funny enough, my mom worked actually at TD Bank during all of this was going on at the time,
and what
and
was she
her
saying?
her post leaving of TD Bank, she would say like them trying to turn over mortgages to lower to like smaller banks and so forth. Like she was like seeing all of this and like this is not like something's wrong here,
Yeah.
basically. Like
Yeah.
something's not right here, and
Like you
that ended up going to the 2008 market,
yeah.
housing crash, basically
And
set it
for
up for the
those who
whole entire thing.
And for those who, just like quick, I mean, we've already mentioned it, but I would just do like quick, like 3 sentence paragraph of what the housing crisis was. Bankers gave mortgages to people who couldn't afford them by basically lying to them about how affordable it was. Then these bankers increased the rates, which was the issue, in order to try to claim more money because they were losing money from other mortgages from people who couldn't pay. Now they up the mortgages. Now more people can't pay, so they don't. So those banks lose the money. Normally that would already be bad. Normally that would already be bad, but they were literally trading on it. So it was basically saying, The Big Short is a fantastic movie that goes into this in
Fantastic
great
movie.
detail. Fantastic
Fantastic
movie.
movie.
And these people quite literally bet on the housing market going up indefinitely, basically, because they were just so high on this money. You know what I mean? The writing was on the wall, and a few people saw the writing and decide to make a move on it. But a lot of people were just so focused on the money in front of them. They're like, I don't care. I'm going to go for it. I do not care.
Exactly.
And the people that suffered the most were the Americans who lost their houses and lost massive amounts of finance of money. And then on the other side, we got the bankers, the rich ones, who received about $425 billion of a bailout. Four
Taxpayer
hundred
dollars.
twenty-five billion.
Taxpayer dollars, people.
Yeah, and take in mind, that's 425 billion is 7 times more than what the amount of money the United States pulls in from the bottom, 50 from all income up to 50,000. So the United States dished out 7x the money that they could have given for tax cuts and social relief for the American people to as a corporate bailout. And that's why really like we see in the United States today, and I think it's the reason why a lot of people hate capitalism in America, which is fair considering how the United States does it. It's capitalism for you, socialism for us. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you guys can suffer and struggle in the financial market, have fun, but once these rich guys have some trouble, we're going to bail them out because without the rich people, this country can't run.
Yeah, rugged capitalism, I think, is what that quote says. I do know that quote that you're talking about, but yeah, it's basically what it is.
Yeah,
Basically
capitalistic
what it is.
socialism. I love this is the best way to say it: gains for us, losses for all. You know what I
But
mean?
but same thing what you're saying. You're like the socialism piece. Like we're not well, I would say not edging towards socialism with Trump, but we
Yeah,
are with him
an
taking these
interesting
stakes
direction.
with these companies on a governmental level. That is like edging on almost definitions of exactly what communism is to a sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very. I
Like
got to look more into what China does with their policy because they're very authoritative with
because
what
imagine that
companies
with every
listen.
company. Imagine every company in the United States, whether you're in um, you know, and like the stuff that in tech, bio, pharmaceuticals, anything of that nature. Imagine just taking a 2% cut from every single company, and the way that you get that cut from their stake is that you allow them to now sell certain things to markets that they weren't allowed to because you made the law so that they couldn't.
The thing
That I
is,
could that's going to be something continuously used, I feel like. I mean, especially with our debt hitting 37 trillion, there's going to need to be some, as you were saying, creative financing
yeah,
to be
I
able
mean,
to you know pay for everything and actually be able to not have America drowning in debt by the next president or the two presidents from now, basically.
I hate the Republican presidents, dude. They're so bad with the
Listen,
money.
everyone
They're
check the
so bad
numbers.
with the money. I mean,
Democrats always do a lot better when it comes to the dollar. But I did see an interesting poll, which it's not in the later section, but it was interesting that actually for blue collared workers, actually, the presidents that they saw the highest salary increase was with Bush and Trump. Actually,
good for them.
1.25% increase, where presidents such as I think Bill Clinton was zero, Obama was down negative. I think maybe like 1, 2, maybe point 5, point 8 in that range. Biden was around the same thing. And so it's just interesting to see that those blue collar workers' salaries are on the rise, which is a good thing. I'm glad
It
they are,
is.
without a doubt.
And one thing I do want to add, though, to counter your point, is that Clinton quite literally balanced the budget, which is
Oh yeah,
astonishing. There's a reason why. I mean, it brings up the argument of what is a good economy? What is a healthy economy? You know what I mean? Do we want to have higher wages with high inflation, with high debt? Or do we want to have not higher wages with not higher inflation, with no debt?
right.
And it just really comes down to the issue is that the United States can't afford the debt. We literally
Yeah, no, we can't at all.
20% of our spending is on interest on the debt.
Yeah, I think the
20%.
individual debt is almost like 100,000 per taxpayer.
It's ridiculous.
Per taxpayer, that's what you have attached to you on top of everything else. Even if you have no debt, you technically do because it's from the federal government. It's just
Yeah.
not, you just don't have to pay it. But now you can because they have a lot of Venmo options. So
They
anyone with
need
big
to,
pockets can help bring that down. Warren Buffett, where are you at?
that better be a tax write-off. You know what I mean? If you're sending money to the damn government to pay
Right,
off
yeah,
the
you
debt
better.
they put us in, you better be able to write that off on
Yeah, I want a
taxes.
write off and a tax credit. Give me
Yeah, no,
both.
seriously, like doing my part, the American participant tax credit,
Literally,
something like that. But no, it's
literally.
really ridiculous, and I think that a lot of people on the right's always been, the party of fiscal conservatism. And, I disagree with that notion because they give more, they're the party of the rich. It's the both parties are the parties of the rich, I should say, the Democrats and the Republicans, but they benefit from the rich in different ways.
Oh,
The
without a doubt.
Republicans benefit from the rich by giving them tax cuts and easier means to operate business. And then the stock goes up. you know what I mean, these people have the stock. I mean, look at Rick Scott, for example, you know, a Republican congressman from Florida. He's one of the very vocal people who's been outcrying about the stock Pelosi bill, I should say, in Congress. Dude traded $20 million worth of stocks in the last half year. You know what I mean? He was crying about how would we be able to afford to live, you know, if we can't do this.
Ask your
Uh,
constituents.
yeah, no,
Basically, ask
seriously.
your constituents. Come on now. Don't do
Yeah, I'm
that.
like, dude, you make $180,000 a year. What do you mean? How are we gonna live? Like, how out of this is the thing. A lot of these politicians are so out of touch. It's unreal.
So out of touch. It's like, I mean, even at the state level, let's just take it for PA in instance, because New Jersey is actually it's actually one of the only part-time legislators. So all
Really?
of the yeah, it's actually one of the only ones. Um, I think it's one of the only ones at least. But so basically, them being a legislator is their part-time job, realistically.
Yeah,
So they have their legislative job, and then they have their actual job, which obviously no conflicts of interest, things of that nature.
makes sense.
And they probably make around 50, 60-ish, I would say, just roughly, in a sense, maybe like at 80 mark. But that's rank and file. Once you get up to leadership, committee, chairmanship, things of that nature, your pay increases. But then in Pennsylvania, they make a lot more money by
Yeah,
being a full-time legislator. And
six figures.
even those state reps aren't even able to do much. I remember um, my state rep would sometimes come, well, not my state rep, since I'm in Jersey, but the rep that I worked for. There'll be times of complaining about, like, how it's not enough that they get, but on that same spin, it's not enough that the constituents are getting, because PA is still at 725
Yeah.
an hour in 2025. Just wrap your head around that. But to kind of wrap up this topic and move on to the larger topic here for today, the foreign affairs piece. Um, we're going to continue to look to see if we're going to be seeing additional trends of this happening with other companies, which I full-heartedly think so. Um, where I stand with it, I'm kind of in the middle, I would say. I think it can be something that's used for the right thing in the right way. But as I've been saying, Trump is leaving some pretty big keys for the next person that gets in the office. Muhammad, what's your last take on this topic?
My last take is actually I want to mention about you talking about the minimum wage.
Yeah, go ahead.
They
Go ahead.
as I mentioned a few times, I am more of a free market guy. I don't think the minimum wage is really something that vital for this reason. Most people, when they think of minimum wage, you think, you know, if you're on an hourly wage, many people are making that. 1.1% of the United States hourly wage workers make minimum wage. That means
Yeah,
98.9% of the people don't. They make more than that. And the issue with rising the minimum wage is that it cuts off our possibilities. Now that can be a whole different debate for a different episode, but I want to wrap this up before we get to our next topic by saying that I do think that the biggest concern isn't exactly earnings, it's how much everything costs.
yes,
Instead of that brings up the question of the if we make everything more expensive and pay people more, inflation is going to go up. It's a guarantee. And so the question is, do we want to, like we said earlier, you know what I mean? Do we want to make more money, more inflation, more debt, or do we want to make not as much money, but not have nearly as much expensive living and not have as much debt? And
right.
I'm on that the latter, you know what I mean? Because this deficit is going to cripple the American economy at the rate it's going. And so it's my opinion better for us to do something about it. And maybe what Trump is doing will help in terms of hassling companies for that money. Which is possible,
Yeah,
but there are a lot of other ways to leverage taxes and more on these companies than just having to meet with the president directly. You know what I mean? And well, I do think that it's good for him to start this new, I wouldn't say precedent, but I should say start the idea of leveraging different means of income from these companies. But I do not think that how Congress or the president are going about it is the actual solution. You know what I mean? I mean, we need to cut spending. We need to increase taxes on the rich. We need to cut taxes on the working class so they spend more, so they have more money without us having to forcibly increase companies to spend more.
And also, that money that they're spending, having more, spend that money at those companies that
Exactly.
that these billionaires own.
That's what I just don't understand.
Just make it a revolving cycle.
Literally,
Revolving cycle.
I'm like, dude, if the working class has more money, even if we increase the taxes on the rich and increase capital gains tax, they're going to be making more money. Who cares? They're not going to be mad they're paying more taxes. They're going to be getting 30-40% more money because their consumer base just got 20% of their money back, every single month.
Yeah, I blame Reagan. Trickle down economics started it all.
Literally started it all. That chart.
That chart. Oh, I wish we could bring it up right now.
Yeah,
but we'll get better with that, everybody. We will. Trust me.
So we're upgrading the stream consistently in the experience. But the chart that we're talking about is the chart of 30-year-olds who own a home and are married. Yeah. It was before Reagan became president, it was about 40-50% holding fairly well. Reagan becomes president, massive downward slope to where we are now at 10%. And I think the Boondocks said it really well with the Reagan being on.
We need that back. I can't believe that's not a thing anymore.
Right. Such a good time. Such a good time for the Boondocks to
watch that a little bit. Honestly, that's such a great show.
It really is. But no, he was literally just like, "Yep, I ruined the lives of the poor people and the black people because I just hate them. I just hate them." He was talking to Uncle Ruckus, and I was like, "Dude, I mean, there's no other way to describe trickle-down economics except for we love the rich and hate the poor." Honestly, You can try to showboat it, you can gloat it, you can glaze it, you can put sprinkles on it, you can sparkle it, you can bedazzle it. It is hot garbage, and we clearly see how hot that garbage is. And I just can't wait until this idea that's in Republicans' heads just disappears forever. You know what I mean? I mean, we got the incoming, we'll use this to segue into the next topic. We've got the young Republicans, very, very more, I wouldn't say extreme necessarily, but against the current conservative methods of doing things. And, one thing we've seen bigly on that, aside from the economy, is the Israel situation.
Yes.
So just recently, speaking of Israel, Ukraine, Gaza, they so we'll start off with what do you want to talk about? Ukraine.
So for this segment, it's going to be a lot of information. So
foreign affairs
starting with foreign affairs section, starting with the Russia-Ukraine developments. Then we're going to be moving into the Gaza ceasefire, and then we'll touch on some timelines and implications on both of those, and then that's what we'll use to wrap up that section. But there's a lot going on within these last few days in August, but we'll get it started. So the White House met yesterday, hosted. So they had a meeting hosted by Trump, brought together Ukrainian President Zelensky and key European leaders, including NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, the Finnish President, Italian Prime Minister, UK Prime Minister, and representatives from Germany and France. Actually, during these, so I'll continue, but it was funny enough that I don't know if you saw, actually, when the meeting was going on, Trump just pulled out his phone and called Putin.
I didn't know how he did it. I saw the reports that he just called Putin mid-meeting. I didn't know he uses personal.
So during the discussions, Trump announced efforts to arrange a direct summit between Russia and Zelensky and Vladimir Putin, which I think is going to be happening this week, I believe. So definitely stay tuned for.
They're shooting it for within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, within the next 2 weeks. So hopefully, we'll definitely have an episode on that. So so they're trying to negotiate an end to the ongoing war, now on its 4th year. Crazy to think, honestly.
Yeah.
Describing it as a preliminary step and ruling out U.S. troop involvement. So I've been seeing back and forth on that. I've seen Trump saying possibly, Pam Bondi saying not. Yeah, Pam Bondi saying, Trump saying yes at first, then saying no, then Pam Bondi saying, we're possibly going to have troops. So that part's a little shaky, so there could be further developments within the next few days before Trump and Zelensky and Putin meet. So, pledging, ruling out no troops involvement, but pledging American support for Ukraine's post-peace security, potentially through guarantees without direct military presence. So Trump doubled down on pushing for a total peace deal rather than just a ceasefire, contrasting with European leaders who highlighted the value of a ceasefire as a precursor to everlasting peace. All participants supported a potential trilateral meeting involving Trump, Zelensky, and Putin, though Putin has resisted such formats, viewing Zelensky, funny enough, as an illegitimate and questioning Ukraine's statehood. So Trump framed it as a matter of when, not if. So there's few specifics that have emerged on the truce parameters exactly, with Russia offering little consensus and proposing vague security measures. In tandem, Ukraine has proposed a massive 100 billion purchase of U.S. weapons financed entirely by European allies. So probably those allies that were in that meeting. And then plus an additional 500 billion joint venture for drone production with American films, totaling up to 150 billion in some reports to secure these U.S. military guarantees. So I think he's also saying that there's possibly going to be some land secession as well. That Russia, Ukraine is going to have to give up. And we were talking about this in our last podcast that we had.
Yeah.
I think there is going to have to be some land given up. Like I appreciate, Ukraine doing that arms deal. That's going to bolster a lot and going to help, the Europeans a lot, because they're going to be financing that and funneling the money through that system and so forth. But I mean, land's gonna have to, be given up. Like, I imagine the Europeans are not, particularly over the moon for this, without a doubt. I'm more sure they probably would want to get more out of this deal economically and secure on the security matter side of things, instead of just saying, weapons deal, land secession, we're fine. As we've seen with Russia, land secession is not going to stop them from, wanting to get, I guess we can now say this is a greater Russia, in a sense, returning back to Mother Russia is what Putin is trying to do.
Has he said that?
No, I mean, I don't think, no, he has not said it. But I mean, just looking at historical past, Crimea, Ukraine, what's to say within the next president doesn't try encroaching even further and taking over all of Ukraine, or even branching out, like, like it's not. I'm not saying that he's going to. I'm just saying it's a pattern. Basically.
Yeah, that's possible.
Calls war in a certain area. You're Russia, so you have a big military with big backing. So what are we going to do? We're going to try to finance the smaller guys, as much as we can, as much as possible. And then we see how long it goes for sentiment dies down. The ruling party who is, pushing the war starts to lose support. And now it's like, okay, now we need to come to a deal. And that deal always somehow involves a secession to Russia. And this is kind of like what we're seeing. It's not to say that, Donald Trump is bending the knee to Russia. This is the fact that Russia is understanding what they can get away with American foreign policy.
I want to add that a lot of people would think of, the seceding land as being something that the one big issue I have with people in the West is they're so gung-ho on Hitler. Everything they talk about, they always compare to Hitler. And I'm like, dude, there's been so many other world leaders, so many other authoritative leaders, so many other military leaders. There's been so many different times where stuff like this has happened, and they weren't Hitler. And a big example of this is in the Bosnian War. I know a bit about this. And the big thing that happened about it is half of the country of Bosnia was given to the invading force. And this was an agreement backed by the United States called the Dayton Agreement, which is still in place today. 49% of the country of Bosnia is the Republic of Serbia. 51% is the Federation of BiH, Bosnia and Herzegovina. And they, what happened was Serbia gave the Republic of Srpska, which was a part of Bosnia, a Serbian enclave within Bosnia, And Serbia gave them massive amounts of weapons, volunteers from the Yugoslavian army that they illegally took control of. And then to end the violence, even after the Bosnian people were actually starting to win the land back, U.S. came in and just said, "Listen, you all stop, or we're going NATO." I like to say U.S. because U.S. basically is just NATO,
Yeah.
and with some inclusion of England, in my opinion. But really, the rest of the countries are weak. And what happened was that was the deal. 49% of the country was Republika Srpska. Now they have their own president, but the political system in Bosnia is absolute shambles. There's 3 presidents that rotate every 8 months and then have hold elections every 4 years. And these presidents, this is the deal made by America. And these presidents generally don't like each other because they represent ethnic groups that have very tense, very strong tensions against each other. And the biggest one is the Republika Srpska folk with the Muslims. And he actually just stepped down today, which is kind of funny. But Milorad Dodik, which was the leader of Republika Srpska, he routinely tried to invoke, a civil war basically again, like a secession from Bosnia, which would be illegal against the Dayton Agreement, and that would have led to war 100%. But the reason why I bring this up, this has been done before. This has been done multiple times before, where an invading country invades a land and gets claim of it based off international backing. And what I want to add is that there is no other way to end this war. Putin is not going to stand down. It's either option A, you keep sending Ukrainian soldiers to their death, or B, I should say there's 3 options. A, Ukraine keeps sending soldiers to their death. Meanwhile, they've already increased the age of enlisted soldiers to around 50, I believe, because they have such a trouble getting in the population they need for this war. Yeah, B, Europe joins Ukraine with a ground offensive to really mount that down. NATO joining this war would absolutely make Russia go on the full offensive. Ukraine would get obliterated. Or C, give up the land to Russia.
Yeah. So like this, the buyer supplier model, that deal, the weapons deal that has been talked about and apparently agreed upon, reported by the Financial Times and others, between yesterday and today, is like aligning with Trump's transactional approach that he's kind of been having on a foreign policy level.
Yeah.
I would say, and even on a domestic level, you could say, trying to emphasize no territorial concessions for Ukraine and leveraging European funding to benefit U.S. defense contracts like Lockheed Martin and Boeing. So,
the military-industrial complex baby.
is always going to get a piece.
There's always somebody that comes out on top, and it's always the military-industrial complex.
Those reports came out about the Trump's tariffs benefiting highly top companies that were close to him, basically. Yeah. So it's not far to think that that's something that's actually has credit to it. So Trump indicated, Trump indicated and continues to indicate U.S. involvement through weapons sales, intelligence, and possible air support. Air support. So on security guarantees, Trump signaled vague commitments from the United States akin to NATO's Article 5. So with the European bearing the main burden, basically, the U.S. would not be manning the main burden of all of this. We would just mostly be giving the weapons, helping Europeans finance the money. It's the Europeans that are going to have the heavier lifting than us in a sense. So Zelensky stressed that a strong Ukrainian army bolstered by U.S. and European support is the best guarantee. While the UK committed to potential boost on the ground, Putin has suggested Moscow as a potential venue for this trilateral summit. So there's preparations that are continuously ongoing, as Mohammed said, within 2 weeks, correct?
Yeah, within the next 2 weeks is what
so within 2 weeks, and as you were saying, Trump stated that he gets along with both leaders, portraying Russia as strong and Ukraine as weak, urging a deal to cut these losses on both sides. Possibly, as we were saying, involving land swaps, amid concerns that Zelensky's kind of worried that a trilateral meeting could pressure him into concessions like ceding the Donbass, if that's how it's pronounced.
Donetsk.
Donetsk.
Yeah.
Donetsk. So, and I heard that from earlier in the week, even a little bit last week, that that was something that could be possibly on the table. And even there was I doubt it's actually real anymore, thankfully, that Trump was even looking at giving parts of Alaska
Yeah.
to Putin. And
Yeah, a Republican Party would have lost credibility until 2028, and then they all would have denounced Trump massively.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That would have been treasonous across the board.
Absolutely.
So-
That would have gone to the White House.
Oh yeah, the White House and or Supreme Court. Well, Supreme
Yeah.
Court a little tricky.
No, I mean, I personally would have. I would have been out there with the
Oh,
sign,
yeah.
throwing
no
smoke.
doubt, yeah.
Probably would get arrested. But
Mhm.
that's what being American's all about.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we're going to move into the next subsection of this larger section, looking at international news, looking at the Gaza ceasefire. So yesterday, August 18th, 2025, Hamas announced it's accepted a new 60-day ceasefire proposal mediated by Qatar and Egypt, which includes the phased release of approximately half the remaining hostages, about 10 living individuals and the remains of 18 deceased, in exchange for around 1,700 Palestinian prisoners and increased humanitarian aid into Gaza. The proposal is described as 98% similar to the U.S.-backed plan that Israel had accepted, but which collapsed earlier.
Because of Israel.
Because
I want to add.
Yeah, because of Israel. So Hamas officials confirmed no additional demands, attributing the acceptance to pressure from mediators amid the 22-month conflict sparked by the October 7th, 2023 attacks. So Israel is expected to respond by Friday, which is the 22nd, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office expressing skepticism and insisting on full hostage release and compliance while continuing military operations in Gaza. That's that occupation that he was talking about, that we were talking about in our last episode. And this comes amid U.S. pressure under Trump, who has positioned himself as kind of like that mediator, and also, in his words, Nobel Peace Prize winner for the Middle East conflicts. And funny enough, that Hillary Clinton's right behind those coattails on pushing for him to be the for the Nobel Peace Prize, basically, to be nominated for.
It's a big party, and we're not in it. They were arguing against each other on TV, and then they were smiling and laughing with each other off camera. You know what I mean? Hillary is just as much invested in the military-industrial complex as Trump is.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean,
100%.
I never took either of them to be like one's lesser than the other and what they're into. Like, I know a lot of people portrayed Trump. Trump. He came into the scene like, oh, he's not a politician. I'm like, well, he still hates Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton. Many Democrats. He is a Democrat, actually.
Yeah, he is more of a Democrat.
So he is not. Business and politics are two things that have two different definitions, but live in the same house. Let's just say that for it.
And when you're a billionaire, you are involved.
It's all the same. Yes, you have to be involved. You can't not have that. You cannot have that much amount of money in stocks and not have connections, ties, friends, leverages on individuals in Congress, or whether it's even at the staffer level.
Yeah,
because even the staffers are just as important. They may not be making the vote, but they make sure they get the information to the Congress individual. So that's so still on these developments. Who knows what's going to be happening with Gaza. I did hear that Israel is looking to attack again.
They're 100% going to do so.
Like, that's going to spark even more. So once they put this to the side, occupy Gaza, forcefully remove these individuals from their homes that they've been.
Say it for what it is: ethnically cleanse the Palestinians out of their homes.
It's basically what it is. They're just trying to clean this area from individuals that have been there for all of their lives over some God-forsaken vision that he has for greater Israel, and for the diluted belief that he has a mandate from God to move these individuals.
Dude's European. This is why I hate West Europeans. This
But
is
then
why I
you,
hate
it's
them.
worse when you have politicians, American politicians, that feed into it. Ted Cruz, Johnson, all these individuals, Lindsey Graham, stating that if we don't if we don't support Russia, I mean Israel, then God doesn't support the United States. You know how crazy that
Literally,
is.
literally.
You know how crazy that is.
Insane. It's insane. And they what I want to add on top of all this is that form of that ideology of Christianity was funded by the Rothschilds. And sorry, my cat's
No,
coughing. And I'm not kidding when I say this. The Schofield Bible which is the Bible. It's a what's it called? A note Bible, a study Bible. Yeah, study Bible. And this Bible was penned in the late 1800s, and it was financed by the Rothschilds to be spread around America and Europe, because the whole big reason behind it was that it was promoting the idea of Christian Zionism. And the Zionists who were working to make Israel knew that if they were going to do that, they needed support from the big backing of the wealthy countries, America and Western Europe. And it's really been just a huge success for them in regards to America. We literally see Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, perfect examples. Ted Cruz saying, "Oh, I joined Congress just to be the top defender of Israel." You know what I mean? That's what your priority was, defending Israel,
right.
not representing your constituents. And then Lindsey Graham saying, "Oh yeah,
Oh, we'll talk about defending Israel soon."
Lindsey Graham saying, if we forsake Israel, God will forsake us." And this is tying back to what I said earlier about the young Republicans being completely different than the older Republicans. The young Republicans aren't about that mentality. They think this is so stupid. Why are we basing policy off of bad scripture, bad interpretations of scripture? And more so, why in the world would we want to support a country that is actively manipulating American politics?
Yep.
You know what I mean? And what I think Israel is doing is they're at the end game, really. And they want to push for that greater Israel massively now.
Yeah, I
And
feel like they have. No, yeah, go ahead. Yep.
and they're at the point where the support in America is dwindling. They know that there's a timeline on them now. And that's why they even mentioned trying to court Asia and trying to go over. Here, I'm sorry, I'm just checking my cat out.
There you go.
You okay, Ash?
No, yeah, but I was kind of like saying, well, I was getting ready to say that same thing. They understand that they only have these 4 years, basically.
Yeah.
Or unless JD Vance gets in there and he's gonna, bend instead of
Bend over.
Instead of putting his hand on the Bible, he's gonna put his hand on the what's the Jewish
The Wailing Wall.
Yeah, the Wailing Wall, and have a yarmulke on inside.
As I want to mention one more time, the reason why the Wailing Wall is used as a place of worship was because it's supposed to be a wall built, the last remaining wall of the Second Temple. It's a retaining wall, which means it was a wall that held out like sedimentary, like dirt and all that. It was literally like, imagine a fort, you know what I mean? And then the fort has a wall.
Yeah.
The wall isn't a part of the actual fort. It's just to block things out, but it's not the fort. The fort is what's inside, all the buildings, the structure. If you have a giant, like a fence, if you destroy a fence, you're not destroying the house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like these people are just literally putting their hands up and praying on a giant wall that's akin to a fence. And it just blows my mind.
No, it blows my mind too. And then, just one kind of combining all of these highlights that we've been talking about here. This is still Trump's rapid diplomatic engagement. Potentially trying to bolster his image as well as a deal maker by addressing 2 major global hotspots simultaneously. Yeah. Which I think I usually like to handle one thing at a time, but he's multitasking it somewhat well, should I say? So
the Ukraine situation, I actually think,
he's doing it. Yeah, he is doing it well. It's the Israel situation he needs to handle a little bit better in a sense.
They've got the Epstein files on. That's the issue.
Right. So like success in Ukraine could stabilize energy markets and reduce U.S. Aid burden. So that'd be like 200 billion plus to date. While a Gaza truce might ease regional tensions, including with Iran proxies, and lower oil prices overall. However, some critics argue this commodifies security. It's the best way to put it. Literally the best way to put it. Commodifies security. Ukraine's arm deal as a pay to protect scheme and risk unfavorable concessions like Ukraine's neutrality or incomplete hostage returns in Gaza. So, the White House meeting underscores a transactional U.S. stance, which we are going to continue to follow. And this transactional stance is most likely going to be perpetrated through other countries, as we're seeing with the European leaders and also with Ukraine as well.
Yeah.
So this is going to be something that's continuously that transactional that he's doing domestically. He is bringing that. Well, actually, I actually should say the transactional pieces that he's doing internationally, he's bringing them domestically with our first segment of the day that we talked about with Intel. So he's kind of wrapping his ideas and playbooks all in one in a way. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's easy to follow, but starting to get a pattern of what he's doing, commodifying security, pay for protect basically.
Yeah.
And also, somewhat staking and taking over, we'll just say staking of United States companies to get them in, unrestricted markets that were, banned or had laws on them.
And I want to add to what you said as well, especially basically commodifying security. And, people throw around the word, we threw it around earlier, the military industrial complex. Really, the easiest way to describe that is the war is profitable. War is absolutely profitable for the right people. And to the right people, it doesn't matter how many people die. And I mean, we've seen that Palantir, for example, is providing services to Israel for tracking and data and on Palestinians for identification.
Yeah.
Microsoft made a specially crafted cloud, Azure cloud, for the Israelis to record and store millions on millions of phone calls from Palestine. And these people do this because they don't care about death; they care about money. And, this is, as a religious man, the only thing I can think of is it blows my mind these people don't fear God. Yeah. But at the same time, I will honestly say it's highly likely these people don't believe in God and they just worship themselves, and that's
perpetrate that they do just so that they're able to get
for the benefit. Trump is a fantastic example. I'm not sure how in the world he managed to convince Christians that he was a good Christian. The guy literally has a golden calf in his mansion. It's literally in the Bible. The golden calf that the Israelis worshipped and Moses was furious about. And it even says on that golden calf, in Trump we trust instead of in God we trust. So these people worship themselves. They don't worship God. They don't fear God.
Dude. Like, as you're saying, they're not, those, God-fearing conservatives or no. Christians or even anyone in that administration. No. Because the bigger news within all of this, outside of international news, some international domestic news, basically, you can kind of say. I think you can probably speak more to this mentioning of the Israeli top advisor.
Yeah, do you want me to take it away?
Yeah, you can take it away for raping an American with a child, basically.
So what happened was Tom Alexandrovich, which is, by the way, an Eastern European name. I just want to include that right now. Eastern European name. This man isn't a Semite. He's not. Most Israelis, I shouldn't say most. 40% of Israelis are from Europe. The other a third of them lived in Middle East already, and the rest all immigrated from around the world to Israel. So this guy's from Eastern Europe. Becomes a Zionist because it's to his benefit, works directly under Netanyahu as the director of the Cyber Intelligence Directorate Unit, I believe. Essentially, he works with not manipulating, but ensuring Israel stays on top in the cyber social media game. So, for example, his office, Grok itself, stated that his office is the one that submits most of the suspension requests on Grok when it mentions anything about Israel committing genocide. Grok got suspended for the first time the other day through outside sources because Israeli bots were massively reporting Grok after it said it's a genocide.
Yeah.
And what this man did was that he was trying to solicit a 15-year-old for sex while he was in Las Vegas. And why was he in Las Vegas? He was there for a black hat cyber conference to talk about cybersecurity, threats to cybersecurity for the nation. He even met with the FBI and the NSA while there. Now, keep in mind, he met with the FBI. The FBI was a part of the sting that caught Tom Alexandrovich, and the sting that also caught 7 others involved in it. What it was the FBI was, falsely acting as a 15-year-old girl, and so, talked with these people, and then these people came to have sex with a 15-year-old girl. Boom, Chris Hansen, you've been busted type style deal. And what happened was, amongst the 8 individuals who were arrested for this, 7 of them got court dates, 7 of them are in jail, 7 of them have bails much more than $10,000 because it's a felony to try to rape a child as a grown adult. What happened with Tom Alexandrovich is his bail was set at $10,000. He doesn't mention who paid his bail. He might have, to be honest, pretty rich dude, and he got out on bail. It's normal procedure to take passports from somebody when they're a foreign international committing felonies in America. It's normal to take away the passports. The passport wasn't taken away. And then in that same day, he got a flight to Israel and left the country. Now, why is this even more important? 2 reasons why this is more important. The FBI and the president approved of this not the president directly, but the FBI and the DOJ approved of this thing, approved
and
of the raid.
Facilitated it, and that's the important part.
They worked
and
with the
facilitated
raid.
it. They knew what he did, still facilitated it anyway.
Sorry. Yeah. And what happened was that the DA, the leading attorney of Las Vegas, is an Israeli-born woman. And this Israeli-born woman was appointed and put in her place by Trump despite massive amounts of outcry against many judges. There was a signed letter of 121 judges in Nevada saying this woman is not a good lawyer. She's not fit to represent. She is not a good district. She would not be fit or nor be able to appropriately handle being a leading attorney in the state of Nevada. Trump put her in anyway because she's Israeli and they have Epstein on them. So then from there, what happened was that this woman chose not to pursue Tom Alexandrovich's charges further and just let him go, while every other man who was involved in it, rightfully so, is now still in jail and is going to go likely, deal with this for the rest of their lives. Yes. Tom Alexandrovich, on the other hand, like many pedophiles, got to go to Israel, slap on the wrist, $10,000. It's okay if you want to rape a child. You just pay $10,000, and he gets to leave and be safe. Now, the biggest reason why this is an issue is because Las Vegas police authorities said that the State Department directly involved themselves with the release of Tom Alexandrovich. Then the State Department came out on Twitter saying, "Oh, this isn't true. We've gotten reports of Israeli national trying to solicit sex with a 15-year-old. We didn't do anything about it, XYZ." And it's just, it's clearly a lie.
No, it's clearly a lie.
Yeah, clearly a lie. If you weren't guilty of it, you would have mentioned, in my opinion, you wouldn't simply put out a tweet denying your involvement. Completely. You know what I mean? There's a good saying I like: the hit dog yelps. You know what I mean? Yeah, like if somebody accused me of being a rapist, I wouldn't really feel anything about it because I never raped anybody. You know what I mean? I'd be like, okay, you know what I mean? Right. The State Department knew they had to cover their tracks, so that's why they put out the public statement. Exactly. And it's just, this is exactly why so many people are fed up with Israel. Aside from the human war crimes being enacted on by them, they're quite literally trying to rape American children, and they get away with it.
Yeah, they're just taking advantage of Americans because they understand that they can get away with it. And on that as well, I don't know if you saw, Muhammad, but there's apparently a 31-minute video that exists of police interrogating this individual, and in it he confesses to his crimes in detail. He tells them, the police, that he will flee to Israel, and when his flight leaves, said he's the only one not forced to see a judge. And this is from someone who is basically close with Sean King. Sean King was the individual on Twitter that was putting out the tweets and following this story closely.
I'm
And
glad you mentioned this.
apparently Twitter admitted that Israel demanded the removal of his tweets. Completely unheard of.
An American company
Yeah,
complying with a foreign government to silence
understand
Americans.
you got to understand the optics of how that looks from an international and domestic level and how wrong
Elon's a
that is.
whore, dude. I hate that man.
And just how wrong that is. And it's things like that that are only going to continue to snowball and pile up. We're only 8 months in,
Yeah.
and then we're already getting all this stuff.
We're already
You
getting
don't know what
Israeli pedophiles released
mind you,
because of they're Israeli.
what happened with the New York situation. I hope everyone didn't forget all of the Jews having an underground, all the Jewish
tunnel.
underground tunnels with mattresses and baby cribs, and like that stuff needs to be looked at. But I think it happened about like 2 years ago. No one's talking about it now. So it's like those things like that. You're gonna hear them here. You're gonna hear stories like that. We're gonna keep tracking things like that on this podcast because it's important, and that's the stuff that's So it's what the behind the ballot is. These are issues that you go to vote for and vote on.
Mainstream media literally hasn't covered the Tom Alexandrovich story.
It may not be legislation, but these are still points you have to live with yourself and understand with yourself whether or not you wanted to vote for an individual or if you support a certain topic that we're talking about. Now, the next topic might be a little dicey, but I don't think for a lot of people, just for conservatives, it's a little dicey. We're going to be getting into the new Trump movement to ban mail-in ballots and voting machines for the 2026 midterms, citing honesty.
It's important to note also why he started to talk about this.
Yes, I think
put it in his ear.
I think Putin put it in his ear, pretty much.
He did.
So, yeah. So August 18th, President Trump posted all on Truth Social and stated publicly, I just want to touch on something else. We're not going to touch on the podcast, but his most recent tweet about the National African American Museum.
Yeah.
Freaking insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that'll be next episode.
Dude, if any African American votes Republican after these comments, I'd be blown away.
Exactly. So for with the mail-in ballots trying to ban it, we know he's been saying that mail-in ballots are rigged the election when he lost to Joe Biden, as well as his numbers for his win against Hillary Clinton as well. So he has his sentiment towards mail-in ballots basically. So he's aiming for honesty in the elections. He claims these methods enable fraud despite no evidence from 2020 to 2024. So all those probes, no evidence of any wrongdoing. And if I'm not mistaken, during the aftermath of the election, there was actually, I know there are accounts of ballot harvesting, but I can't account what was true and what was, someone taking a picture of a bag on the floor and just saying it was, mail-in ballots somewhere. But yeah, these probes and a lot of the individuals that actually came out as being criminals, what they were doing were Republicans, actually double voting and things of that nature. So NPR and Reuters reported this, noting Trump lacks unilateral authority. States control elections under the constitutions, under the U.S. Constitution. It's labeled that states control their state elections. So just
love the founding fathers.
Yeah, love the founding fathers for that. And so just looking at party affiliation here, this is where it's going to get down to the numbers to understand who this is actually going to be hurting in a sense. So based on 2020 election data, 58% of Democrats voted by mail compared to 29% of Republicans.
Now, which election? 2020?
Yeah, 2020 election.
COVID is an important thing to talk about for that. A lot of Democrats were literally terrified of going in.
Exactly. So that's why you kind of have that high up number.
Yeah.
So his claims to fraud through both parties, his claim to fraud is something that both parties used, which is the mail-in ballot process.
I'll be back in 10 seconds.
Yeah, go ahead. With in 2024, with less disparity. Dems still led by 15 20 points across the board when it came to the party that was doing mail-in ballots the most. I mean, me personally, I usually have done a mail-in ballot throughout my elections and presidential election. I think more recently, actually, the last two presidential elections and midterms, I actually did go and vote only because I lived so close to my voting station, which a lot of individuals and Americans don't have the access to, and a lot of seniors don't have that ability to get out and vote as well. And individuals that are within that median age range are working and sometimes have children and other duties that doesn't allow them to take off that day to go and vote and so forth. So he's really trying to do is to bring down that Democrat, vote structure. But I really do think it's going to turn it on his head, and he's going to see, Democrats actually just go out and vote now.
Yeah.
Seniors will be out and voting. 18-year-olds, they'll be out and voting. They're going to take this and run with it, because like with the age bracket, 45% of voters, 65 plus, used mail-in absentee ballots. And now also think about it. Mail-in, you're not going to count mail-in ballots. What are you going to do about absentee ballots for the military? Like if you're going to ban one side, but you're accepting the other only because it's coming from, military, that we can't have, exceptions.
Can't make exceptions.
Can't have exceptions for military, but not exceptions for citizens. That's what I want our audience to kind of understand, that you can't make that, those two things not the same, because at the end of the day, they are both citizens. Yes, one's a soldier, but at the end of the day, they are both citizens who still should have the accessibility to vote in any means possible, whether it's in person, mail-in, or absentee ballot.
Absolutely.
Muhammad, in your past elections, how have you voted? Did you usually go into
in person,
or did you always mail in or absent? Well, in college, what did you do?
I didn't vote in college. I did.
Get the tomatoes. Come on.
Well, let me explain myself. Actually, I was registered to vote, but I didn't realize I was registered in my hometown, not at the college that I was going to.
Yeah.
So when I went to vote, they didn't have me there, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Well,
right. Yeah. At that point, it's like a little mistake.
Yeah. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? But in 2016, what was it? It was Trump, Hillary, right?
Yes, it was.
I was gonna vote third party. I hate Hillary Clinton and I hate Donald Trump. I hate them both so much.
I remember that. I actually was telling, I was at the beach this weekend. I was talking to someone. Like, I actually remember all at least the up to Obama's first election. I literally remember where I was, like, watching it, every single one. Like, being a kid doing social studies homework, trying to see like the percentages and so forth. To 08, watching it at my friend's house, staying up until it actually was over, until Trump and Clinton. I actually went to a watch party at York, got back home and fell asleep, because I knew where things were headed.
Yeah.
So that's when at that point, Dom and Dylan were my roommates, and they woke me up, and I was sleeping. It was like 1 o'clock, 1:30 at night. They were like, "You won." I was like, "Cool," and I fell right back to sleep.
Yeah, not surprised. You know what I mean?
I was like, "Cool." I was like, "All right," like whatever. Well, I was like, I got to get ready for tomorrow then. Huh?
Bernie Sanders would have won, in my opinion.
Right, he would have won across the board.
I would have voted for him.
Yeah, a lot of people would have voted for him. That's really what got me into. I wouldn't say got me into office, but I'd say got my ideals more into that political leaning and thinking. And as the years have gone on, it's obviously changed. As you get older, have more responsibility, and pay more taxes. So that all will change your outlook. But also, I still do keep some of those same things. Like I always say, like we need to tax, stock trades down to a minimum. I'm talking 0.0001%, smallest number that can generate good revenue just off the sheer volume that trades are done by. But yeah, that's just certain areas that I've gone conservative in, but still in that Democratic, blue dog Democratic leaning, basically.
Yeah.
To sum it all up really. But look at back at the age ranges, 28% of those under 30 used mail-in ballots. The youth age, is looking at, it was 45% in 2020, looking at almost what was this in the 2022 midterms, and saw a 50% increase overall and early and mail ballot voting, with seniors leading, and then middle aged individuals and then younger individuals, following within that pack. So I think he's going to turn everything on its head if he actually can go through with this legally to ban mail-in ballots. I think it's a bad way to go because he's kind of like almost like a scared to lose scenario in a sense. Or
That's why they're doing the redistrict thing. They
That's
know
why, yep.
which way the wind's blowing.
I mean, it was a little. I mean, you could say it's funny. I don't think it's funny to talk about those things. But he said that in his meeting with Zelensky, I don't know if you heard their little banter.
Oh yeah,
he said,
martial law.
He's like, oh, if there's a war, no elections. He's like, oh, so if we have a war 3.5 years from now, no elections. It's like that should not be a joke.
Like, I mean, to Zelensky, it's not a joke. It's something he's doing to hold power.
Exactly. And, just as, Putin was able to get in Trump's ear about mail-in ballots, and we're seeing him, now, looking to, hurl them completely out of the voters, wheelhouse for how they can vote. He's doing the same thing all over.
Yeah. And, I want to add that a big reason why Trump, and we can use segue into the next segment, is the big reason why Trump's nervous. The thing is, these politicians, they're not stupid. They may do extremely stupid things for the country, but it's because they and their rich friends benefit from it. It's stupid to us because we suffer. It's not stupid to them because they benefit from it. And they have put themselves in a position where the economy isn't good. People are stressed out about multiple things. And even Trump's biggest thing, which was immigration, he's starting to teeter amongst his crowd because some of his crowd isn't thinking that he's going far enough. And, he mentioned getting 3,000 deportations a day, I believe, and the most they've gone is 1,800. Now they're down to like 900 a day. And they've been trying to bolster those numbers by saying, oh, people have been self-deporting. You know what I mean? They're just scared because of what's happening.
Right, sure.
And then all of a sudden we get news of an illegal immigrant in Florida killing 3 people in a car crash. And so it's still a problem, and his base still is very aware of what the problem it is.
And I want to touch on that a little bit when you're done.
I'll say we'll segue into the outlook for 2026, this final segment. So recent polling data on the economy and such as well has shown that more and more people aren't being confident in the economy. And one of the big things Trump touted was that the economy was better under me than it was under Biden. Now, majority of people don't feel that way anymore. So Trump has been really trying to focus on the key points that he has had to bolster his standing on that. And one of them is immigration. And now, as we just mentioned, there's been this big crime that just occurred, very tragic. I hope the people who lost their lives find peace. But Mikhail, what did you want to say about it?
So I wanted to say, like, as we get to polling, like, we're going to start grand and then, scale down with the polling and the numbers as we, let our viewers and listeners know what's going on. So I'm thinking in the sense, like, I talked to you about this too. I was saying, the incident in Florida, the individual got their CDL license from California.
I mind you, illegally somehow.
Yeah, illegally somehow. So Gavin can have cannot take flack for that. It was illegal. Yeah. However, so now you have that on one hand with let's just call him the front runner at the moment. We'll call him the front runner for the Democratic primary 2028. So you got that baggage with him, and then on Trump's side, you have this, facilitation and release of this Israeli. Now, for you, which one do you think is like the worser of the two? In a sense, if you were to cast a ballot and you were to see both, which one are you like, that's worse, I'm going with the other guy?
Well, just on a surface level, I see the illegal immigrant, I think, came in here legally, somehow got his license in California, the CDL, despite not having a license. So legally got a license because you need a driver's license to get a CDL. And I think, my mind would be, well, somehow was allowed to get that in California, somehow was allowed to get into the country because he was Indian. So he may have come down from Canada, may have come on a plane illegally. I honestly don't know how somebody from Asia could get into the country illegally. And aside from coming through the Canadian or Mexican border. And My cat is messing with my camera. And then on the other hand, though, I see that as negligence. I see that as these people just completely screwed up and people will have died from that. And then I see
Mhm.
the Israeli side of things and I think this guy was trying to rape an American child and then the Trump let him go. Not negligently,
Right.
on purpose.
No trial, no nothing, just gone.
Just gone. So I think, yeah, it was very stupid how, very tragic and stupid how what happened with the illegal immigrant killing the people with a car crash. May they rest in peace. But Trump is very on purpose allowing a child sex predator to leave the country because he's Israeli.
Right. I
And
mean,
it's
it
like
was
if
a pretty
Gavin
bad.
Newsom would have directly given this guy a CDL illegally, I'd say he deserves just as much flack for this
Oh,
all.
just as much, just as much. But given
This
it's
is that's the
illegal,
only way to equal them. Like if Gavin Newsom literally gave this guy his CDL, which isn't what happened.
no,
Yeah.
no, not at all. So, now going into topic 4, recent polling on economy, personal well-being, and political landscape. So, kind of what Muhammad was speaking to, that 4 years, individuals feeling better under Biden. That's that age-old, Ronald Reagan question: Are you better off than you were 4 years from now? And the sentiment is not what you would think that it is, and kind of like what Muhammad has been saying. 52%. So in the latest RMG poll from August 2025, so beginning of this month, 52% responded no, indicating that the economy was not better 4 years ago. 43% indicated yes. So this reflects net negative perception, potentially tied to post 2024 economic challenges like the inflation recovery, job market shifts, and global uncertainties. And also, don't forget, a lot of job revisions has happened. I actually do think there's going to be another huge. I think it's going to be huge in September. Well, I think all the August numbers are going to be bad. I think so. I've been seeing some reports. I actually wish I bookmarked them so I could talk to you briefly about them. But I've heard it's going to be pretty bad. So that age-old question is what got Reagan elected. So now, if individuals are now seeing that Trump's policies are not making them better off, 4 years ago, same thing that Trump was touting to, he's going to end up having to, get flack for that, and also speak to that as why individuals aren't feeling that sentiment. That's going into Democratic polling, Republican polling, looking at who's rising to the top, who's wailing to the bottom. God help our souls, Kamala Harris at 26% for the Democrats. That's just blind follow. That's just blind follow.
Woman.
It's blind follow, I say.
Yeah.
But followed by Gavin Newsom at 13%, Pete Buttigieg at 11%. Funny enough, he actually on a one-on-one, Pete Buttigieg beat JD Vance.
I love to see who would vote for no spine Buttigieg. You know what I mean? Like, I look at that man and I think he would get bulldozed, steamrolled, and be an absolute weak.
Oh, he did horrible on. He had an interview regarding Israel two-state solution.
Oh my god!
Next time you have a second, listen to yesterday's breaking points. Botched it.
Israel is our friend. And when your
like
friend is doing something bad, you put your arm around that friend and say, how can we get through this together? I'm like, dude, if my friend was raping and murdering children, I wouldn't be friends with them. I just want to add this. We didn't touch on it earlier. Israel has more child hostages than Hamas has hostages in general. They don't talk about that. They don't, because they know if that got out, they'd be like, oh my God, look how bad Israel is. Israel is quite literally one of the most, if not the most evil country in the world. There's no other way to talk about it. They actively go to other countries to rape people. They actively commit war crimes. They actively gaslight you. They actively tell you what you're doing is wrong. And if you don't support them, you're evil. Dude, if I'm not going to support the rape of children and the bombing of innocent people, and if you want to call me evil for that, sure. If you want to call me anti-Semitic for that, sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, this whole thing has been affecting the Democratic Party massively.
Yeah, massively. And it's only gonna get worse as it continues. Don't get me wrong.
91% of Democrats don't support Israel. and yet the most of the politicians do. It blows
Yeah,
my
for you to
mind how
be
much money these people are willing to sell their souls
yeah, for
for.
you to be the next like 2028 Democrat candidate, you cannot be on an APAC stage
I
anytime.
like Gavin, but if he's pro-Israel, I'm not voting for him. I don't care if
Yeah,
the Democrats lose,
yeah,
but I'm
no,
not.
yeah, I
Yeah,
can't would not be able to do that. But I would say, just touching on his role briefly,
yeah,
loving the way that he is tweeting right now. I think it's actually the best thing that any Democrat has done, and I'm surprised no one has done it. I'm like,
yeah,
he is literally doing what Trump did, and people on Fox were saying, "Oh, this is childish behavior." It's like, well, look at your guy in the Oval Office who was doing the same thing for 8 years, and now
yeah.
just
No.
because he's doing it, like, come on, let's
Oh,
not.
now it's a different
Yeah,
story.
now it's a different story because it's Gavin Newsom. Like, no. Like, I mean, if I say this, probably catch me flack for it. But honestly, I feel like he actually might be like a combination of like if Obama was from California, right? First term senator with that Joe Biden likeness. I think he's like those two all together, honestly, in the sense. I was sitting here thinking about, like, he's got the looks, he can stand on his policies, he can fight for his policies, what he's done in California. It's
California.
same thing with um Obama.
Yeah,
He was able to stand on his feet for what he was doing for his first term. Same thing with Biden. Obama has that charismatic speaking that Gavin Newsom does, but he has that friendly ability to have that Joe Bidenness, not creepy at all, just
yeah.
that friendliness. And then looking at the Democratic side, I mean the Republican side, Vance dominating at 43%. Actually, RFK and Ron DeSantis tied at 9. Big boot Ron, you just sit down.
I like RFK a lot more than
So do
Ron.
I. Yeah, I like
A
him
lot
over
more.
this whole slate.
I
Honestly,
like RFK more than the whole
over
slate too.
over Rubio, over Haley. Like, RFK and Haley wouldn't be bad in a sense. Man,
That'd be a nice ticket.
would be a nice ticket. I know they're trying to push out. No, not push out, but push on to conservatives, Vance and Rubio, which I can see as potential. Faith Hispanic combination there. Somehow they can tie that together.
Yeah, Rubio, the spineless coward, and JD Vance. So I really don't have too many complaints about, to be honest.
Yeah, no, and just getting into some quick numbers before we wrap up here. The economy is getting worse. 36% of people say. I'm sorry, 49% of people say it's getting worse. 36% say it's getting better. 13% say it's staying the same. Uh, Wanting to cover this redistricting piece again because it is still within the news. Basically, this poll was asking, which party do you think is more responsible for partisan gerrymandering? They actually blamed Republicans, 37%, which I think any knowledgeable person would as well, because they started this fight. I know we were saying before that kind of was, Democrats with their level of redistricting and, demographic identity politics. But it makes total sense that individuals are viewing Republicans and blaming them, and that leads to that.
It's that modern bias.
Yeah, that modern bias, as well as House models predicting that actually the Democrats may pick up 233 seats, a plus 18 from where they're currently at, and Republicans will be negative 18. Apparently, they're looking at for the 2026 model, and this model is from 538, and also in conjunction with Cook Political Reports.
538 is pretty good too.
Oh yeah, very good. I like them a lot. And if no one knows, 538 is for all the electoral votes. Just saying.
And I want to also add on top of that the projected House swing. Democrats also believe they can actually win the Senate.
They believe they can win the Senate. So Senate is such a much harder battle, but if they can win the Senate,
is.
they do a lot. But I would love for them rather to control the House, because if I'm not mistaken, yeah, the House is where the budget bill starts. All budget bills have to start in the House of Representatives. So they actually really need to take the House to stop any further reconciliations, or even try to give some relief to these cuts that are going to be coming down the pipe. But as everything shakes up, whether it's on the economy, whether it's domestically, whether it's internationally, always please be here to check on what we're talking about and the information that we're providing to you guys. It's always in a engaging, informative, and balanced platform. and format that we try to do and continue to do. So
Thank you
thank
all
you
for.
guys. Look,
You can go. You can go. You're the host. Go ahead.
So thank you guys all again for listening. I hope you guys really loved that special episode with Jamal Hawley. We're definitely going to have more of those. We appreciate the continued support, and keep joining. And we'll talk to you soon, Balloteers. Thank you again.
Thank you guys for listening. May peace be with you all. Have a good day, and God bless America.